How yin's doing? I'm Ian, and this is my Streets of Rogue character tier list, where I'm going to go over each and every one of the characters in the game, including DLC, and rate how good they are. Before we get started, there's a few things I want to cover, most notably what I intend to do with this channel long term, as well as how I'll be rating the characters. If you want to skip ahead, I'll leave a link in the description with a timestamp. Well, not a link, just a timestamp, but you get the point. First of all, what do I have planned with this channel going forward, since this will be the last Streets of Rogue content I intend to be doing in the foreseeable future. Simply put, I intend to go back to my TF2 How to Kill Streak series until Streets of Rogue 2 comes out, and then once I've had a chance to sink my teeth into that and form a finalized opinion, I will start making guides and videos for that. But until then, I will go back to making TF2 content like I was before I started remastering my old Streets of Rogue characters. And I should just use this as a segue to explain who I am and why I have the authority to simply make this tier list in the first place. I'm Ian, and I'm basically the only source of getting information for Streets of Rogue whatsoever if you ignore community forums and the wiki. Because, quite frankly, if you don't want to be reading forums upon forums or scrolling through a wiki for answers, you're probably going to end up on one of my video guides for each of the characters in all likelihood, especially if you just go through Google search. Hell, before I started making content, the only things you could find on YouTube were a bunch of people saying, "This is an underrated gem, go play it." So, yeah. I've 100%ed this game and made guides for each and every single one of the characters, and I will have timestamps to each of the characters as well as links to their character guides in the description if you want to skip ahead to a specific character that you're interested in. Now, before I get started, one last thing, obviously I need to explain how I'm going to be rating these characters. First and foremost, I will be judging them based on 3 simple categories. Simply put, power, flexibility, and skill requirements for the most part. Power is pretty self-explanatory, it's how powerful the character is. Flexibility is how many ways you can go about playing the game with them. If you have a character that can only be played in a very specific way, they're going to have a very low flexibility, and if you have a character that can only do one thing really well, you will not be able to go into the highest possible tiers. And the last thing is the skill requirements. If I need to have a PhD to figure out how to play this character, yeah, no. If you need to be a master of this game just to get the character to function as intended, no, they're just a bad character. It should be something that you can pick up and play and do reasonably well with. Not something that requires a high skill. Simply put, I'm looking for something with a low skill floor and a high skill ceiling, ideally. Something that can be easily picked up and learned by a new player, but can easily reward players who decide to hone their skill and master them. With that said, let's start with the characters going in order of which I've made the guides. First and foremost, the Slum Dweller. The Slum Dweller, simply put, they are the Snowball character. They're one of the first characters you have. You don't need to do anything to unlock them. They're just one of the straight out of the box, I bought this game for the first time, here's a character to play with, and their skill sets are just, you can level up faster, you get more options to choose from when you level up, from what traits you can pick when you level up. So I will put them in basic. They are the basic tier. I should probably have explained these bits further, but simply put, basic is you're not shooting yourself in the foot here, but you're not getting an advantage above the average. Like, basic to me is just average, awesome is you're above average, super, like, this is the S tier, you're overpowered, you are the best of the best. Yeah, crap, you're inferior to the baseline in my opinion. Okay, whatever. Dumb, you are just shooting yourself in the foot, and you are just playing this for the fun of it, or because you want a challenge. And failure is, I do not recommend playing this character at all unless you're trying to 100% the game. Just don't touch this at all, if you don't have to. But yeah, basically, it's probably best I start with this, because really, the Slum Dweller is going to be the baseline. I'm going to be judging all the characters of, like, if you're better than the Slum Dweller, you deserve to be ranked above. If it's apples to oranges, you're going to end up in the same tier, so don't go thinking, oh, this guy's on the right side or left side of this character, therefore they're better. No, it's splitting hairs. It's not a noteworthy distinction. The characters are just too diverse to make that kind of mid-tier. If you're in the same tier, it's splitting hairs, honestly. It's a matter of preference, in my opinion. Not a matter of this one's objectively better. But yeah. Slum Dweller, they are the snowball character that, simply put, they are not overpowered or underpowered in any capacity. Moving on to the Doctor. The Doctor... okay, that actually knocked my phone over, but no damage is done. We're good. Doctor... I'm gonna put them in A tier. They are just like the Slum Dweller, a character you get straight out of the box when you first buy this game. You don't need to unlock them, and they have a chloroform hanky, which is really powerful, but they can't use weapons, and their big quest requires you not to kill anyone, which hurts their flexibility, in my opinion, very severely, to the point where they can't make it in an S tier. Yes, the tranquilizer gun they start with helps remedy the worst of it, but it's still a huge handicap you have to consider. That's just enough to keep you from getting into S tier in my eyes. I can accept how some people might say it's S tier. I can appreciate the argument there, but in my personal opinion, no, it is not enough to get into S tier. Now, let's move on to the Hacker. The Hacker can be, they are barely S tier in my opinion. Simply put. The issue with the Hacker is their big quest requires you to install malware onto a computer, which causes a bunch of robots to spawn in and try to hunt down and kill you. That is a huge pain in the neck, but the flexibility and powers you get from the hacking abilities and such just more than make up for that issue, especially if you're careful with your positioning. You can hack into the robots. This is probably the least new player-friendly character out of all the characters you get straight out of the box without needing to unlock anything, but the power and flexibility that his hacking abilities provide more than compensate for the issues that the learning curve he has would offset on me. So, yeah, yes, there's a learning curve that hurts him from being the absolute best of the best, but it isn't enough to just stop him from being S tier, in my opinion. Moving on to the Thief. Again, I'm just starting with the characters you have once you unlock the game. Just, you bought the game, these are the characters you have. The first 6 characters I'm here, these are just the starting characters. I'm putting Thief and Basic alongside the Slum Dweller. It's the Thief character. You can steal stuff, sneak around. The name is very self-explanatory. There is nothing to be hidden about this guy with what you're going to be doing here. It's fun, it's great, but it doesn't really... Constantly being forced to rob people and steal their stuff and then have to sort through their inventory is just a lot of hassle, in my opinion, which just stops it from being awesome, in my opinion. But it's not like you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're not at a disadvantage. You can make this work. I can accept if some people want to argue about it being awesome tier, if you can, if your playstyle more heavily synergizes with the way he works, I could see how that could work. But generally speaking, I'm going to go with Basic here. Moving on. Soldier. There you are, Soldier. Again, Soldier, he is the guns blazing, I want to blow everything up character. I will say, again, B tier, simply because, yes, you are armed to the teeth with just every kind of weapon you could possibly want out of a starting character you would have straight out of the box. The only people with better weapons, in my opinion, honestly, the only character in the game with a better weapon is the Robot, who has a rocket launcher in a starting inventory, but we'll get into them later. But the Soldier, you are armed to the teeth, you have Modern Warfare, so you have regenerating health if you drop below 20 HP. Just really good character overall, but the real issue is you have to go guns blazing. You have to take the violent approach. You don't have a stealth mode, sneak around, go for an election victory. Those aren't really options for you. You can probably make those work if you try hard enough, but you're working against the grain of the character, so to speak. So that's going to put it in B tier, in my opinion, just because, no. If you don't care about stealth or the flexibility factor I'm considering when it comes to the characters, you could easily make an argument for it awesome tier. But to me, the flexibility and ways you can go about playing the character is very important to me. Therefore, he cannot make it above a past B tier here, so... Just my opinion, as someone who has 100% in this game and beaten the game with every single character twice. Just my 2 cents. Last among the starting characters is the Bloods. The Bloods, as well as the Creeps, who you have to unlock, but is really just a cosmetic difference between them. It's just what gang you want to fight here. If you keep the Bloods, you have to kill everyone with red. If you're playing the Creeps, well, the Creeps are the blue, and the Bloods are the reds. You know what? The difference between the two doesn't frickin' matter whatsoever, so... Yeah, the gangsters. You pick which color you want to fight against, and red or blue, the difference doesn't matter. You have some great out-of-the-box starting gear. You just have a very flexible loadout with the friend phones and having everyone in the same gang help you out, and killing hostiles always helps improve your electability, so the big quest of eliminate all members of the opposing gang actually helps your electability, so out of all the starting characters, I would say that the gangster is easily the best for those of you going for an election victory out of all the characters you have unlocked from the start of the game. And they have a lot of flexibility, so awesome. Now, if you have a personal preference of you don't... Now, this is a bit of my okay, let's start over. Now, this can be a bit of a personal bias here. I care more about having a strong start rather than the snowball potential. So if you care more about your late game potential and don't worry about the early game as much as I do, you could easily make an argument of making the Creeps and Bloods basic and the Slum Dweller awesome if that's your preference. But this is my video. This is how I would rate them. These guys have a better early game and better flexibility overall. Meanwhile, yeah, you can snowball more with the Slum Dweller, but you don't get to control what traits you get when you level up. You just get to choose between 5 instead of 3, which, that's great, but it's not enough, in my opinion, to put you more than as a baseline for me to judge at all the other characters. Like, what's better, the ability to snowball, or... No, it's apples to oranges. It's awesome, but not awesome, if that makes any sense. With the Creeps and Bloods, though, they have basically everything you could reasonably want out of a character straight out of the box when you start a run, and they simply just lack that oomph factor of, oh my god, this is amazing, to make it into the S tier. Like, they are just everything you could possibly want, short of a special ability, in all honesty, with these guys. Alright. Next on the agenda is the zombie. When I originally made a Streets of Rogue tier list, I put them in S tier, but that was just personal bias because they're my personal favorite character to play, and I wasn't really thinking ahead. It was just something I did out of obligation because I put a poll up, hey, I'm going to reach 3,000 subscribers. What do you guys want to do? Here's a few ideas, and they voted for the tier list. So I just kind of made it without any forethought or pre-planning whatsoever, unlike this where I have some notes in front of me, just kind of making sure I have an idea of what I want to say here before I go into each character. But for the zombie, quite simply put, they're overpowered early in the game, but once you start getting into the later lores when every single cop has a gun and you have to deal with the zombie outbreaks, yeah, good luck dealing with that in the uptown levels where there's lockdown walls and every other cop has a Glock or a machine gun on them at all times. Like, you can zombify each and every floor completely, but no. Also, when you consider the flexibility aspect that I'm using for this character... Yeah. Sorry about that. But yeah, when I was going on about flexibility earlier, like why the soldier can't make it because he lacks that flexibility, like, the zombie is, like, just a more extreme version of the soldier. Like, it's easy to learn, it's super fun in my opinion, just to zombify a floor and have your horde of zombies deal with problems for you as you progress, forcing the cops to run out of ammo, but you have to zombify everything. Peace is not an option with you. Election victories are basically impossible. You would have to basically use a hypnosis item to get the cleric in the mayor's office to be in your favor, and then hopefully not have the mayor shoot you on sight as he stands next to the podium, which is absolutely going to happen. So, yeah, you're not going to be able to realistically go for an election victory, or really any kind of victory that doesn't involve just killing everyone and turning them into zombies. Like, if that sounds fun to you, this is a great character. If it doesn't sound fun to you, I'm gonna have to pick something else. I'm sorry. Next, we have the Gorilla. Gorilla is the first irrefutable S tier, in my opinion. They are just the Creeps and Bloods on steroids. They have a Primal Lunge special abilities, some banana level traits. The banana lover trait, I'm not sure if that came in right or not, but yeah, their banana lover trait allows you to actually have more health regenerated from eating bananas, which means if you just go down to a cloning booth and mass-produce bananas, you pretty much have all the healing you could possibly want for very little cost. You also get banana peels, which can be a useful utility weapon whenever you're in a tight situation, such as if you're being chased down and just need to get away. They also have a big quest that requires you to rescue other gorillas on the floor, which will boost your electability. The downside is that you do have the can't speak English trait, so you'll need to find a translator or something to kind of help you out with that, or go to an augmentation booth and remove that trait if you want to just talk to other NPCs normally. But those are easy fixes that are pretty trivial to deal with in the grand scheme of things, and just don't hold him back enough. Like, if the hacker's high skill floor and the issues that come from dealing with the big quest and the robots wasn't enough to stop him to get an S tier, the gorilla's mild inconvenience of not being able to talk to people normally is not going to be an issue, like, at all. Okay? Okay. Next is the Comedian. I know a lot of people love the Comedian, but personally, it's basic. Like, you need to get certain upgrade traits to make sure that people don't necessarily get offended at your jokes. And there's no guarantee you're gonna get those on a run, especially before you need them most. Like, everyone thinks, oh, I'll play jokes and get everyone to love me, but half of the time, there's a chance they're gonna just hate your jokes and vote against you because they got offended, so... Like, there are traits that can help medicate this, there's ways around it, but it's just too much of a headache, in my opinion, to be like, yes, this is the character you want to play for an election. No, this is something you want to do when you've done an election victory before and want to try to spice things up. It can be fun, you can have good times here, but it's not, ooh, this is the election victory character for easy election. No, this is I want to go for an election victory and I want to play a unique character, not I'm trying to min-max for an election victory whatsoever. Still, they have a lot of flexibility and generally can work, but like I said, they just have too many issues, in my opinion, with people getting offended at your jokes to really be better than the Slum Dweller, in my opinion. Next is the Mobster. Where did he go? Where is the Mobster? There he is. Mobster, definitely S tier. There's the whole corruption cost issue where you have to constantly head up to cops or ATMs to get the police not to turn hostile to you, but if you play into their quest and you'll be bankrolling money so easily. You can rig the elections, just get people to vote in your favor. Like, yeah, the skill floor is a bit high compared to other characters, but if you've been able to reach the point where you can actually unlock this character by heading to the downtown areas and getting someone to rig the election in your favor, you're probably good enough at the game to actually do that in the first place, let's be honest. But yeah, they're S tier in my opinion. They just have everything you need. I honestly always grab the friend of the family trait they start with whenever I see it, just because I don't want to deal with their shakedowns whatsoever in the downtown, because that can easily screw you over later, since even if you manage to fight them off, you're probably going to have to waste some materials and health items and so forth that you're going to be needing on the later floors if you want to get past the uptown, trust me. Like, they won't kill ya, but they'll make you use resources you need to make sure you make it through the uptown alright, and if you're using them on these guys, you're not going to be able to use them on the lockdowns. So, you know, being able to play is one of the biggest setups for failure in the entire game, and make it so that you don't have to deal with that whatsoever, and actually have the biggest obstacle, in my opinion, for the late game, working in tandem with you as one of your biggest allies, S tier. Like, yes, the corruption costs are a problem. Accumulating money can be a little tricky if you don't know what you're doing, but, as I said, if you were able to play through the game legitimately enough to actually unlock this character in the first place, that shouldn't be hard for you to figure out. Now, let's move on to the next character. Let's see who we have here. The Scientist. Okay, yeah, this is dumb. The Scientist is just a crap character, in my opinion. Like, you have a crap ton of items in your starting inventory, sure. Like, understand that this tier list is not about what is the most objectively fun character. It is, what is the most likely for me to realistically win the game if I'm not getting screwed over by RNG? Like, if RNG is not a factor, how good will I do with this character? Like, if I don't have to worry about RNG whatsoever, S tier is basically an auto-win. A tier means 90% of the time I'm going to win. Basic means a little RNG needs to go in my favor, but I'll manage. Anything here, you're shooting yourself in the foot. In this, you're shooting both your feet. Like, you have a massive inventory full of mostly useless items, and you have to constantly go through a big quest where you're just applying random status effects to people and scanning them with your research gun. Like, the micromanaging of the inventory... If you don't mind micromanaging your inventory in this game at all, you can easily move him up a spot or two, in my opinion, if that's not a big deal to you, but it's a massive pain in the neck for me. Like, I don't want to deal with that crap whatsoever, so yeah, he's a problem in my eyes. And the big quest is always a huge pain in the neck as well, because it's just a wild card. You're constantly having to apply status effects to different NPCs, and that can easily result in people turning hostile and having an angry mob if you're not careful. It's just too much hassle, plus, all gorillas are hostile to you. Which, like, yeah, the gorillas have hostile scientists, but the scientists are so weak in terms of combat ability, they're basically just bags of free XP. So, that's not an issue for you there. You know, unless there's, like, a police nearby, and you're in the uptown area and have to deal with lockdown walls, and that's a whole thing, but that's... that's everyone, really. Just don't walk into a scientist's lab if you don't have to in the uptown as Gorilla and you'll be fine. Scientists, you're gonna be playing Russian roulette effectively with your big quest, hoping to God you don't get something that's gonna put your head on a chopping block, so to speak. Next, Robot. S tier. You have a rocket launcher in your starting inventory. You need to have something going horribly wrong with you for you not to end up in S tier with that. You're immune to your own explosions. Like, yeah, the rechargeable trait can be a little finicky to learn, but it's not like the mobster whatsoever, where it's a lot of work. And frankly, if you're playing in multiplayer, a robot and a hacker playing together is amazing, because the hackers install malware, create a bunch of robots that'll go hunting them down, and then the robot can EMP blast, recharge his batteries, and just instantly kill the robots that are now hunting him down for installing the malware. Really overpowered combo these two have. Just really good. But just overpowered in my opinion. Plus, if you're playing with the infinite ammo if you're playing with the infinite ammo mutator whatsoever, the robot is just busted, because infinite rocket launcher ammo just means you can just tunnel through any wall effectively and just tunnel around the map. I've done it before in like a multiplayer game where someone's just playing with infinite ammo enabled and let randos join, and I just started breaking anything that even vaguely resembled game balance as I just tunneled around. Like, police lockdowns? Okay, the lockdown wall might be immune to my rocket launcher, but the world border isn't, so I'm just gonna start tunneling through that with my literally infinite ammo now. It was glorious. Yeah, it was 10 out of 10 would recommend for anyone who's just looking for an overpowered run to try that out. But yeah, robot overpowered, just really good. The only real downside is you kind of have to speedrun it a little bit and don't get to linger on a floor as long, because eventually you're going to run out of electronics to sap into and you'll have to leave to the next floor. But that's a minor issue, and like I said, if the issues with corruption costs with the mobster and the malware robots with the hacker aren't enough to stop them from getting to S tier, that's not going to stop the robot. At least in my opinion. Now, Vampire, I will say, is basic. Now, if you play a lot of multiplayer, he can definitely be A tier if you're like playing with friends online a lot, because in multiplayer, players will hoard all kinds of items in their inventory, and just, you will never be able to raid a refrigerator for healing items whatsoever in multiplayer, because someone else is just going to get there first and steal it, so you can't rely on healing items whatsoever there. And having the Vampire's Bite giving you an alternative form of healing means that if you like to play a stealthy character and love playing with your friends, they can be the distraction, you can sneak around, and you can use the NPCs that they hopefully don't kill, all Rambo style, as health packs for your own personal needs. So yeah, I'll give them the basic though, because personally I tend to play single player, not online with randos as much, so that's not going to be the deciding factor here. But if we were talking about multiplayer as the major factor and assumed that you're playing multiplayer exclusively, I would absolutely put them in awesome, but in my opinion, they're just basic. You're not shooting yourself in the foot. It's apples to oranges with the other characters, in my opinion. Like, Zombie's my favorite, but that's just personal bias. Next, the Assassin. I'm gonna put them in awesome. They're great at killing. Like, if you just want to sneak around and kill people and be like the stealth archer in a Skyrim we all play as, these are the best characters to have. The downside is that if you want to go about a route that doesn't involve just mass murder, they are just useless. Your entire big quest requires you to kill someone on each floor, as well as anyone who witnesses you killing them. So, yeah. That whole issue of being forced into the murder hobo playstyle stops you from getting into S tier, in my opinion. But it is just too powerful of a playstyle for me to put it anywhere below awesome, in my opinion. Next, we have the Wrestler. You can pick up... I'm putting them in a crap tier because, simply put, you have a lot of endurance, you have the fun throw ability, but you have a big quest that requires you to go run the ones with someone on each floor, and all you have to compensate is a large starting health pool and a COD piece. Like, okay, that's better than nothing, I suppose. It's definitely better than the Scientist. But simply put, like, I have in my notes here just written as fun but impractical. Like, that is the Wrestler in a nutshell. They're fun, but they're kind of impractical. Like, if you're trying to go for a serious run where your end goal is to actually become mayor, they are not the best character by any stretch of the imagination. They're just a fun character to dick around with. Moving on, we have the Bartender. I will put them in awesome tier as well. They are just hands down the best character for going for an election victory, even better than the Comedian by a landslide. It's not even a fair contest. The only issue is, much like the Assassin, they are kind of pigeonholed into that playstyle. So if you want to do something other than election victories, you're kind of fighting an uphill battle with the Bartender. But if your end goal is an election victory, they are the best character to have, hands down. If you want fuller detail here about their abilities and starting gear and such, I have guides, links in next to the timestamps down below in the description. But, yeah, this is unquestionably the best character for an election victories, and they just lack the ability to do stuff other than go for an election victory. And that issue alone is enough to stop them from getting the S tier, in my opinion, because, like, yeah, the mobster can go for an election victory, but they can also just go and kill everyone. And the same can be said for the other characters. Like, yeah, you can do that. Now, moving on, we have Cannibal. Where is Cannibal? There he is. Cannibal. Basically, same story as the Vampire, it's just that the Vampire is more of a stealthy character, the Cannibal's more of a melee bruiser kind of setup with their gear and stats and allocations there. They eat dead bodies and then can heal, but the downside is they can't use normal healing items, so if we're playing in multiplayer, absolutely going into awesome tier, but since you have to be just a murder hobo who eats people, you are never going to get into S tier because of the lack of flexibility that gives you, as well as the fact that if you're not in multiplayer, you're going to end up finding more than enough healing items to not need that cannibalize ability in the first place. But if you are playing in multiplayer, it's honestly better than... Like, if you're just looking for something that you can go run around with friends and heal yourself without needing to worry about your friends stealing all the health packs, the Cannibal is easily the best character. The Vampire is a close second in regards to that, but it really depends on what you want to be doing. If you want to be stealthy, Vampire. If you don't care about stealth at all, Cannibal. Now, moving on to Cop, hands down S tier. Just absolutely has to be S tier. Like the handcuff ability, just being able to arrest everyone you need to on a floor. It's a little bit of a higher skill floor to learn, just because you can't just arrest everyone without some sort of penalty. Like, if you just start arresting people because you feel like it and not because their mission objectives are in any way guilty, you're gonna lose some XP and get penalized. You can pick up a trait to deal with that, but that's a trait that you shouldn't have to pick up in the first place, and you can pick something else better. At least most of the time. Sometimes you just end up with crappy traits you won't use, and it's just better to go for something that lets you just arrest people on a whim. Up to you, really, but it's just overpowered. It's easy mode, like I've said in my guide for the character. The Cop is easy mode for Streets of Rogue, hands down. No questions asked there. Moving on, Slave Master, I will say A tier. You're basically just hitting people with a taser, putting a slave collar on NPCs across the floor, and then playing Pokemon with them. That is a Slave Master in a nutshell. It's very overpowered, it's very good, but it basically screws over your hopes of getting an election victory because no one wants to vote for the guy who enslaved their best friend. Like, yeah. Like, I have an entire guide, again, like I said earlier, like, just hitting people with a taser or a freeze ray and then enslaving them and sending them on suicide missions to deal with neutralization targets is fun as hell, or just using them as explosives to blow up walls. Equally fun, they are a great time, but they lack the flexibility similar to the Assassin and Bartender to reach S tier. Like, they have a single thing they're good at, and if you try to do something else, well, that's not really... It's an uphill battle. That's simply fun. That's all there is to it there. Alright, moving on, we have the Werewolf. The Werewolf, it's the same story as the Wrestler. It's fun, but it's impractical. You would turn into a furry, murder a bunch of people for your big quest, and then hope to God that you don't just have an angry mob kill you while you're crazy dizzy afterwards. It's fun, it's doable, but it's impractical. That's all there is to be said. Do you want to just have more fun? Great. It's a fun character. It is, I would say, just objectively more fun than the Mobster, hands down. Like, if we're rating these characters by fun, the Mobster would be way lower, but this is based on how practical they are at actually beating the game and becoming mayor, in my opinion, in single player. That is what I am basing this on, for the most part, so I can't... You're just shooting yourself in the foot too much with having too little to show for it. You have a powerful werewolf transformation, and if that's not enough, you're up shit creek without a paddle, effectively. That's the werewolf in a nutshell. Next is Shapeshifter. Shapeshifter I will put in A tier, because they are just awesome, being able to shapeshift and manipulate people. Great time, really powerful, but when you're not possessing someone, cops are hostile to you innately, and due to the way that possession works, it can be quite finicky to figure out how to get elected in the first place. And all of that just makes it way too... These are just too big a con, in my opinion, to just give him the S tier. Like, if cops are hostile to you, by default, under any circumstance, like, if you're... The only reason the cops should be hostile to you is because they saw you doing something stupid. If the something stupid was walking around while not having a meat suit on because you had to be forced out of it as you left the elevator for each floor, yeah, no. Like, if you find a cop before you can find a flesh suit to hide from them, they'll shoot at you, and that can lead to all sorts of problems, and that's a situation you don't want to deal with, ideally. That issue alone, especially if it happens uptown, is enough to just cut them out of Super, but the power of the possession ability when things go well is just too great, in my opinion, for it to not end up in awesome. It's objectively better than the Slum Dweller, in my opinion. Plus, you can flush yourself down toilets to teleport around the floor randomly, and that's always a good time, as well as a great get-out-of-jail-free card if you happen to have problems going down near the public restrooms. Won't always work out that way, but having a theoretical escape card is better than just not having one at all. Next is the Shopkeeper. Shopkeeper I will put in A tier. Like, a lot of people in the comments on my older tier list were saying I rated them too lowly, and I agree, but I also don't think they are S tier at all, because, well, their whole thing is I have a lot of money and a shotgun. And if I'm in a situation where a shotgun or a lot of money doesn't work, you're boned. That is basically it. Like, yes, there's a lot of flexibility there with the money, and there's a lot of power with a shotgun, especially early on in the slums, but the shotgun's power stops meaning anything once you get past the park. Because once you get past the park, the police have better guns than a shotgun on them. Some of them will have a shotgun themselves. It won't matter at all. And money, it's great, like, yeah, but when someone's turned hostile, you can't bribe them into not shooting you anymore. It can set you up and help get you out of things like buying health packs from shopkeepers or getting the right items, but there's no guarantee that the shopkeepers will even have the things you need in the first place. There's no guarantee of that. So you're relying too much on the shops having exactly what you want, and while you'll surely have enough money with the big quests and having a portable Cellomatic on you with the shopkeeper, you won't be able to guarantee that you can find a place where you can buy exactly what you need on each floor. So I just cannot make the shopkeeper S tier, in my opinion. They have a plan of bribe everyone, effectively, for 99% of the problems they face, and use a shotgun on the remaining 1%, and in the situations where neither of those approaches realistically work, you're boned. I'm sorry. I know some people love the idea of just having money and think it's overpowered, but in this game, money is not that powerful. It's kind of like gas in your car. Like, yeah, you need it to some extent, but it's 20 miles to the gallon. Okay. Okay, I only need about 2 gallons then to get here. Putting 20 more gallons in there isn't going to get me there any faster. Like, expanding the tanker efficiency only goes so far if I'm just taking a 10-minute commute to work, okay? Like, that is my 2 cents on the matter. If that makes any sense. Firefighter, I would say, is C. Firefighter, it's a crap character, in my opinion. It's very self-explanatory. You get a fire hose for an arm, and you have a lot of fun crowd control, but crowd control is only going to get you so far. It doesn't actually solve anything. It just lets you buy time, effectively. It's fun, it's usable, but you're not really... There's nothing about the firefighter's setup, in my opinion, that screams, yes, this is what I want to play. It's more of a, ooh, a new character, let's try them out, or I'm trying to 100% this game and I don't want to try the challenge characters yet, so I'm just going to do this one character that no one actually plays, and get that out of the way while I try to postpone the inevitable on that one. But speaking of the crap characters you don't want to play, we have the Jock. Jock I will also put in crap tier because you have one really fun, like, unquestionably one of the most fun abilities in the game with charge, like just being a Kool-Aid Man and charging through buildings can be fun as hell. But you have no way to steer or control it, you're just gonna charge through buildings, and it's very easy if you don't plan ahead just to charge through like 5-10 buildings and piss off everyone on the floor and have an angry mob on you in no time flat. So it is just, you're giving up too much utility, in my opinion, for the Jock's abilities. It's kind of like going past 40 endurance in Dark Souls. Like, yeah, there's a benefit to doing that, but the utility and flexibility you're giving up to achieve that goal is simply not worth it, in my opinion, to ever realistically do in most cases. Like, someone in certain niche categories can make it work, and if you want to make an argument of how fun the character is, it's easily an A or S tier in terms of the fun department. But we're talking about viability to actually get you to the mayor's village from starting in the slums by yourself to through uptown. Like, no. Charging through buildings and causing insane property damage are the big quest that requires you to destroy crap on each floor. No. That is not... No. At all. No. Just no. Fun. Absolutely. But it's not it's not reliable. It's not consistent by any stretch of the imagination. Now, last among the characters, in my opinion, is the investment banker. This is the last of the characters not counting DLC on this tier list. Everything else you'll have to pay a premium for the DLC in order to play as. But for now, this is the last, the investment banker. The investment banker is effectively just a challenge character. You are shooting yourself in the foot, and you're just trying to have a challenge here. I know I've seen comments in my videos saying, like, it's so easy, I was able to beat it with my first try. Okay, sure. RNG can make this game stupid easy or near impossible to beat at times, great. And there's tons of people who have played like Dark Souls at Soul Level 1 without dying whatsoever and have actually beaten it like that. That doesn't make Soul Level 1 a viable build for Dark Souls, that just means that you're good at the game, and same mentality to me of, oh, I was able to beat it as Investment Banker. That speaks more to your skill as a player rather than a testimony to how good the banker is as a character, in my opinion. It's just that simple. He's not a good character, you're just good at the game if you can beat the game consistently as the investment banker. That's my 2 cents on the matter. Starting with the DLC characters now, we have the Goon. The Goon? Meh. It's just, hey, slum dweller. It's the slum dweller of the DLC characters. It's a very basic character. You can walk into buildings, start shooting people up, just try to defend a building from angry people who don't like the fact that the guy who owns the building has an orange arrow over their head and start coming in with their own orange arrows, because I guess they stole from the orange arrow cult or something, I don't know. But yeah, the goon is just... it's okay. It's not... you're not shooting yourself in the foot. It's not like the wrestler or the werewolf where the cons outweigh the pros, in my opinion. It's not like the doctor where the pros outweigh the cons. But it doesn't have something to get into S tier there. Oh, it's just basic. It is okay. Alien, I'm gonna go with A. It's awesome. Don't get me wrong. It is powerful with the mind control ability, but you have a trait that makes it so you can't use any kind of items basically at all. And you're near harmless. Like, you can't even punch people. There's no quest. It's not like with the doctor where you could at least, like, punch people or use a tranq gun. No, here you punch for 1 damage a pop. Like, hitting someone in the face, 1 damage? And if mind control doesn't work, oh well. It's kinda like the shapeshifter in my opinion. You have a one-trick pony, but you're giving up too much for this powerful ability in my opinion, and there's too many ways that ability can go wrong for me to ever consider it in S tier, in my opinion. It's just too unreliable and inconsistent for it to be S tier. It is too powerful for me to put it below basic, or even in basic, though, along with the Slum Dweller, though. So it just ends up here because there's nowhere else it could possibly fit. That's my 2 cents on the matter. I think I might be saying that phrase a bit too much, but well. Demolitionist, A tier, hands down. Like, you're blowing stuff up, you're Havoc bomb processing unit, you have basically infinite explosives. Like, getting the big quest done can be a little tricky, but if you don't care about completing the big quest, this is an easy win for anyone who just wants to become mayor, doesn't care about doing their election victory, and just wants to go, and doesn't really care how they become mayor as long as they do. Like, if you just want to blow stuff up, don't care about the big quest, and just want to have fun and become mayor, this is an easy win, in my opinion, with the Demo Man. But he's also requiring you to blow stuff up and piss everyone off, and that was enough to stop the soldier from getting into awesome tier. It's gonna stop you. It's even worse now, and the only reason you're going into awesome tier is because you have so many explosives, and the only time I've seen more explosions go off anywhere is in a Michael Bay movie, simply put. Like, you're basically Michael Bay with this character. You have so many explosives, they're all gonna go off in glorious fashion. It's a fun time. It is impossible not to put in awesome tier, but it's not enough to get into S tier because you're gonna be pissing off a lot of people, and your chances of an election victory are almost guaranteed to be ruined by any serious attempt to go for your big quest. Like, I'm sorry, that's just how it is. Oh, looks like I forgot to put the mech pilot in my notes. Let's put them in, well... Don't have notes. I forgot to actually write for the... Just noticed that now. But, splitting hairs here, but I'll go with basic for the mech pilot. Like, you have the mech suit, but it can't fit through doorways. You don't have any way to break the doorways down or anything. The mech suit, it's a fun thing to use, it's very powerful, but your big quest actually turns a lot of people hostile to you on the floor, and you have to kill all of them. Like, the mech suit makes it manageable, but it's also like, well, I guess I can't go for an election victory now, since everyone who would have voted for me is now dead. So, yeah, you're just giving up too much flexibility with that, and you're just going full murder hobo. It's powerful, it's fun, but it's also a lot of... It's a hassle. Well, dealing with that big quest and all the hostilities you'll have to deal with, it's not enough for me to say it's awesome tier. Like, yeah, you get a mech suit, sort of, but it's more of like a endoskeleton that stops you from fitting through doorways than a true mech, if you know what I mean. But, yeah, that's what my 2 cents on the mech pilot is. Moving on, yeah, Bouncer gets their own special failure tier. Do not play the bouncer unless you're trying to 100% the game. It's just a glorified escort mission. It's a pain in the ass. It's not fun. There is nothing here about the bouncer I would recommend to other people to play as. The only reason you'd want to be the bouncer is because you want 100% the game. That's it. That's the only reason you should be playing them, in my opinion. Either that, or because you want to challenge yourself to the highest difficulty without dealing with some sort of custom character. Because you can do that if you want to go for a real hard challenge, just give yourself all the negative traits and nothing to redeem yourself with. You can do that. But yeah. Bouncer is garbage. Lastly is the Courier. S tier. Unquestionably, the roller skates take a little bit of getting used to, but once you do figure that out, it's just smooth sailing, honestly. You have a big quest that makes people friendly with you on each floor. It's easy to make up for your mistakes on it later on, and you can just run around and escape problems with your high speed to get in or out of any situation you want. So if you want to go peaceful or go for an election route, it's very easy. If you just want to kill everyone with hit and run tactics, that's easily possible as well. Realistically, as long as you don't just try to stand there and take hits, you can very easily make the Courier work out perfectly with this character. So, yeah. That's my 2 cents on this whole thing with the Courier, and that's all the characters now, it looks like. So, yeah, feel free to discuss this in the comments section on what you think is here or there, because it's splitting hairs in some cases. If you have a personal bias towards something, like you're thinking, oh, this character's way too hard, like if you think, like, oh, if you're really considering difficulty on a character and you want to say, like, the hacker should be lower, I can understand, if not necessarily agree. Because I am someone who has made guides on every single one of these characters and beaten the game with every single one of these characters twice. Gonna leave it at that. But, yeah, comment down below what you think I did wrong here. I'm sure someone's gonna say that their favorite character is S tier, I'm sure there's gonna be a sea of people complaining about the crap tier, especially, like, Werewolf's Guard, Jock's underrated if you're careful with the... Yeah, sure, if you're careful, but it's very easy to miscalculate and think, oh, I'll hit the world border wall only to crash through a corner of a building and get spotted through the hole, and that can easily go wrong. The Wrestler, you have to run the wands with someone on each floor, and that's going to be a drain on your health pool and healing items, and you just don't want to deal with that if you don't have to. And you kind of have to with this character. But that'll be all for now. Have a nice day, everyone.